So good morning, everyone. I'm glad you're here. And I just want to give us a little context. For the past couple of weeks, we've been looking at the Four Noble Truths. So we looked at the first Noble Truth, and then last week we looked at the second Noble Truth, and today we will explore the third Noble Truth. So for a little refresher, for those of you who have been here and a bit of context for those of you who haven't been, the first noble truth is that life is filled with dukkha, which we define as pain or suffering. So it's inevitable that we're all going to experience some kind of physical, emotional, or spiritual challenges in our lives. And it's important to look at our experience of dukkha as being on a continuum, from a mild annoyance to some really significant suffering. So that's the first noble truth. The second noble truth is that suffering exists because of our attachment to the cravings or aversions or delusions that we hold. So what we need to be really clear about here is that the problem, if you want to use the word problem, is the attachment. Cravings, aversions, and delusions also all happen along continua. And sometimes my desire for something is not at all problematic. It's my kind of grasping onto that that becomes the problem. And it's the same with aversions. You know, sometimes an aversion is a really healthy thing because it helps keep us safe. And the same with delusions. A mild delusion like denial that helps us get through a challenging time, you know, what's the problem there? So again, it's all about the extent that we are hanging on to whatever it is that's going on. So the third noble truth is that the cessation of dukkha is possible. So suffering ends up being optional, pain not so much. So we can look at this as the first noble truth is that we all have pain, and that the second noble truth is that suffering is related to how we respond to the pain, and that the third noble truth is that suffering is optional. So if it's optional, how do we deal with it? How do we get rid of it? Because suffering is not pleasant, right? So one of the underlying ways that we can relate to our attachment to our desires is to understand that we don't have to become slaves to these desires, that we can release from the need to satisfy our cravings. So I think that part of the way we do that, and it's a piece of the answer, is to become really fully aware of impermanence. So as we really get to know in our bones that everything is in constant motion and that everything is in flux and that everything is always changing, then we're more able to let go of our hanging on to everything or anything. So we have pleasant experiences and we want to hold on to them. And that creates suffering because we know it's going to change. We have unpleasant experiences and we do the push away. We want to avoid. And that also, it's going to pass. And when we delude ourselves of what's really happening, what's really real in this moment, that also creates these fantasies that take us adrift. So I think that being able to really stay present in the here and now is very helpful for understanding the impermanence of everything. So when we can really stay present with our thoughts and feelings, we notice that they're constantly moving. They come and go if we don't attach to them, and if we don't get tangled up in the stories associated to them. So that's one piece. Another piece that's helpful, I think, is that we always get more of what we put our attention on. So if we focus on the gratification that we experience when we're having a pleasant experience, we're going to want more of that. And then we're going to start really desiring. If we have a desire and can look at the whole picture, oh, there are pleasant aspects of this, but there are also drawbacks to it. And if we focus on the drawbacks, then we will find that our craving diminishes. So that's another way to kind of look at this. And then another piece that I think is helpful is that all of us are of an age where we have some life experience, and we can look back with perspective. And if we look back on our own lives, we can find those times when we were in misery and notice how that changed, how it morphed, how it led to something else. And that's another piece of really kind of grasping the notion of impermanence. So I have a silly story that I'm going to share. Some of you may be familiar with this, and I am not an experienced storyteller like our friend Noah Baum, but this story has many iterations, and I think you might find it helpful in illuminating this. So there was a peasant farmer living in a little shtetl, and he had a son. And all of the peasant farmers around him had a horse that helped with the plowing, but this farmer did not have a horse. So his son and he would take turns plowing the field by hand. And the neighbors would come over and say, "Oh my goodness, this is terrible. You have to work so hard. It's too bad you don't have a horse." And he would go, "Maybe yes, maybe no, who knows?" And that would be the end of it. So one day, his son is out and finds a wild horse and is able to capture it and bring it back to the farm. And all of the neighbors come by. "You have a horse. This is a wonderful thing. You can train it. It can be help you plow. You'll have so much more free time. It'll be so much better for you." And the farmer goes, "Maybe yes, maybe no. Who knows? We'll see." So they do train the horse, and the horse helps them with the plowing, and everything is fine. And one day the son takes the horse out for a ride, and he gets thrown. And he's brought home with 2 broken legs. So he's in bed at home with 2 broken legs, and the neighbors all come over and says, "Oh, this is a terrible thing. Your son has broken legs. This is awful." And the farmer goes, "Maybe yes, maybe no. Who knows? We'll see." Then a couple of days later, the Cossacks come through and they conscript all the young men. This guy is lying in bed with 2 broken legs. They don't take him. So we don't know what the outcome is. And if we don't attach, like our farmer friend who didn't attach, we can go through life with a little bit more equanimity and less suffering. So I am going to invite us now to take our seats and to take a nice deep cleansing breath, breathing in through your nose and then out through your mouth. And seeing if you can breathe in all the way down into your belly, and then breathing out slowly through pursed lips as though you're blowing out a candle. I'm going to ask all of you today to use your breath and your body as your focal point. So I encourage you to pay very, very close attention. See if you notice differences between this breath and the next breath. Maybe shifts in the rhythm of your breathing. Maybe you'll notice that the breath of this inhale is different than the length of the breath of the next inhale. And the same with the length of the exhale. And even that pause between inhale and exhale. Paying very close attention. You might even notice that some breaths seem to be smooth and some breaths are not so smooth. And you also may notice where you feel the breath most prominently as it enters your body and as it exits your body. Or maybe you feel some tightness. And if you notice some tightness at any point in your body, at any place, you might want to just note that. And then after a few minutes, return to that place and see if it still feels tight. It may, and it may not. So we'll sit in silence now, noticing the impermanence of the breath. It comes and it goes. And probably no two breaths are actually the same. So as we gently and slowly come back to the room, I would like to read a poem to you. This is called Because Even the Word Obstacle is an Obstacle by Alison Blutterman. Try to love everything that gets in your way. The Chinese women in flowered bathing caps murmuring together in Mandarin and doing leg exercises in your lane while you execute 36 furious laps, one for every item on your to-do list. The heavy-bellied man who goes thrashing through the water like a horse with a harpoon stuck in its side, whose breathless tsunamis rock you from your course. Teachers all, learn to be small and swim past obstacles like a minnow, without grudges or memory. Dart toward your goal, sperm to egg, thinking obstacle is another obstacle. Try to love the teenage girl lounging against the ladder, showing off her new tattoo. This life is mine, in thick blue-black letters on her ivory instep. Be glad she'll have that to look at the rest of her life, and keep going. Swim by an uncle in the lane next to yours who is teaching his nephew how to hold his breath underwater, even though kids aren't supposed to be in the pool at this hour. Someday, years from now, this boy who is kicking and flailing in the exact place you want to touch and turn may be a young man at a wedding on a boat, raising his champagne glass in a toast when a huge wave hits, washing everyone overboard. He'll come up coughing and spitting like he is now, but he'll come up like a cork, alive. So your moment of impatience must bow in service to the larger story, because if something is in your way, it is going your way, the way of all things, toward darkness, toward light. So I am turning off the recording and we can have some time to